Hey guys, tonight we're stepping straight into the chaos of ancient Rome. The sun has just set, the air is thick with smoke, roasted meat, and, let's be honest, way too much sewage. You're standing in a city of marble temples and wooden shacks crammed together like tinder waiting to catch fire. And here's the thing, you probably won't survive this night. So, before we wander down these winding streets, I need to say the usual, so, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand at the city gates just as dusk settles. The horizon glows with the last sliver of orange light, but in the alleys of Rome, shadows already stretch long and deep. You take a breath, and it feels like you've inhaled 1,000 different lives at once. The fragrance of fresh bread being pulled from an oven mixes with the sharp tang of fish left too long on a stall. Add in the smoke from oil lamps, incense drifting from a nearby temple, and the not-so-subtle stench of open drains, and congratulations, your nose is working overtime. People press past you in every direction. Rome doesn't really wind down at night, it just changes costume. By day, this was a city of business, senators, and markets. By night, it belongs to the common people, gamblers, drinkers, thieves, lovers sneaking around in the dark. You barely take a few steps before bumping into someone carrying a basket of figs, muttering curses at you in rapid Latin you can't quite make out. Welcome to the eternal city, eternally chaotic, eternally alive. Your sandals slap against the cobblestones, uneven and treacherous. The street slopes slightly downhill, as many do here, because rain and waste both run down to the gutters. Every step reminds you that this is no clean tourist postcard. Rome has over 1 million residents at its peak, a fact historians love to debate. Some argue the number is exaggerated, others swear the city did indeed swell that large. Either way, the sheer density is overwhelming, and you're feeling it already. You pause near a small shrine tucked into a corner wall. A flickering oil lamp burns in front of a statue of a household god. People toss a coin, mutter a prayer, and move on. You wonder whether you should do the same. After all, who doesn't need a little divine protection in a place where even crossing the street could be fatal? You dig in your pouch and drop a coin, half expecting Jupiter himself to thank you personally. Spoiler, he doesn't. But a kid nearby gives you a quick grin before snatching it up the second you turn away. Rome teaches you fast, never look too generous. Your stomach growls as the smell of food pulls you toward a stall. A vendor waves skewers of roasted meat at passers-by, shouting about the quality of his lamb. Next to him, another sells a kind of porridge made from spelt grain. Nothing looks fancy, but you remind yourself that Roman fast food isn't designed for Michelin stars, it's fuel for workers who barely have time to cook. You buy something cheap, chew carefully, and wonder if your stomach will forgive you later. Scholars still argue whether Roman street food was hygienic at all. Judging by the flies buzzing happily around your plate, the debate leans toward, probably not. As night thickens, the sounds grow louder. A group of young men push past, laughing too loudly, clearly already drunk. Somewhere in the distance, you hear the clatter of dice on a wooden table, followed by a cheer and then angry shouts. Gambling is officially illegal, except during festivals, but that doesn't stop anyone. You're reminded again that the law in Rome is more like a polite suggestion. You try to stick to the main streets, because the side alleys are dark and narrow. Rome doesn't have the kind of street lighting you're used to. A few torches and oil lamps glow faintly, but mostly it's shadows, and in those shadows, danger waits. Thieves love to target strangers, especially ones like you, gawking at every column and arch as if you've stepped into a movie set. A man stumbles out of a tavern door in front of you, clutching a clay cup of wine. His tunic is stained, his eyes glassy, and when he notices you, he laughs, slaps you on the shoulder, and starts babbling about something to do with chariots. Before you can reply, he spills half his drink on you and vanishes back into the smoky room. Welcome to Roman nightlife. You catch sight of the Colosseum in the distance, its arches lit by moonlight. Though the games aren't on tonight, just knowing that thousands once roared there makes your skin prickle. Tomorrow, people will gather to watch men fight beasts or each other, cheering as blood soaks the sand. And here you are, just one more body wandering Rome's restless streets, trying not to become another statistic in a city that swallows the unprepared. The deeper the night grows, the more you realize, this isn't going to be easy. Surviving until dawn in ancient Rome requires more than curiosity, it requires luck, street smarts, and maybe divine intervention. And right now, you're running low on all three. You take a few hesitant steps away from the city gates and immediately realize that Rome isn't built for your modern sense of direction. There's no neat grid, no tidy street signs. Instead, it feels like the city was stitched together by different emperors, architects, and landlords all competing for space. The result? A labyrinth of narrow lanes twisting unpredictably, leading you into corners where you're not entirely sure whether you're heading toward the Forum, or straight into someone's backyard. The paving stones beneath your feet are worn slick from centuries of use. Some are cracked, others slightly raised, so every step feels like a gamble. The buildings on either side loom close, multi-storied insulae, or apartment blocks, rising like cliffs. From a distance, they look impressive, but up close you see the cracks, the crumbling plaster, the wooden beams that creak under too much weight. People live packed inside them, families squeezed into tiny rooms, cooking fires glowing from upper floors. You wonder how any of this hasn't already collapsed on someone's head. Then you remember, oh right, it does. Ancient sources mention that these buildings often fell, sometimes with tragic results. Scholars still argue whether this was because of shoddy construction or simple overcrowding, but either way, you start walking a little faster when you hear wood groaning above. You try to orient yourself. Somewhere to the north lies the Forum Romanum, the beating heart of politics, commerce, and gossip. To the east, the Colosseum sits waiting for the next spectacle. To the west, the river Tiber snakes silently, carrying both trade and sewage in equal measure. But here in the middle, the streets branch unpredictably, and you quickly lose track of your sense of north. At one corner, you find a fountain trickling into a worn stone basin. A handful of children splash water at each other, laughing, while an old man fills a clay jug with care. Public fountains are lifelines here, most people don't have private wells or plumbing. You take a sip, the water cool against your tongue, though you can't shake the suspicion that it's seen better days. A passing woman scolds you in rapid Latin, maybe she's warning you to avoid drinking too much, maybe she's just annoyed you're in her way. Either way, you step aside, letting her balance a basket on her head as she disappears down another street. As you wander, you start noticing patterns. The wealthy parts of town, the domus with painted walls and mosaics, tend to be on the higher ground, away from the smell of sewage. Down here, closer to the valley floors, life feels rougher. Vendors shout from makeshift stalls, selling bread, olives, even questionable sausages. A donkey brays loudly as its owner argues with a cart driver, both blocking the narrow passage until tempers flare. You watch, amused but also wary, realizing that Roman traffic jams aren't so different from modern ones, except with more shouting and fewer horns. The alleys close in again, darker now as the last light drains from the sky. Oil lamps flicker from doorways, casting orange halos onto the walls. You follow one street, then another, certain you'll loop back toward the main road. Instead, you end up in a courtyard where laundry hangs limply between buildings, brushing your face like ghostly fingers. A cat hisses at you from a windowsill before vanishing into the night. For a moment, the city feels alive in a way that's unsettling, every corner watching you, every shadow hiding something. You pause to get your bearings. Overhead, a sliver of moon peers between rooftops. Somewhere nearby, you hear the sound of a lyre being plucked gently, a song drifting from an open window. For a moment, the noise of Rome softens, and you imagine what it must be like to call this place home, familiar corners, favorite taverns, neighbors who know your name. But to you, it's a maze. Every turn feels like it could either take you to safety or land you in the arms of thieves waiting for the lost. Your confusion grows when you stumble into what looks like a dead end, only to realize there's a narrow passage twisting out the side, barely wide enough for one person. You squeeze through, brushing against the walls, the air damp and heavy. On the other side, the street opens again, but not where you expected. Rome seems to mock you with its shifting layout, as if the city itself enjoys watching you get lost. The thought crosses your mind, how do actual Romans navigate this? The answer, you suspect, is familiarity. Born here, raised here, they memorize routes the way you might memorize shortcuts in your own neighborhood. And if they don't know, they ask. You consider stopping a passerby, but most people stride past with determined purpose, eyes forward, unwilling to indulge a confused stranger. You get a few suspicious glances, your clothes, your accent, your hesitation mark you as an outsider. You finally catch sight of a landmark, a towering aqueduct cutting across the skyline. The arches rise gracefully, silhouetted against the night sky, carrying water from miles away into the city. It's both beautiful and intimidating, a reminder that Rome's engineering is centuries ahead of its time. The sight reassures you, you're not hopelessly lost, not yet. If you keep the aqueduct in view, you can at least orient yourself. But orientation is one thing, safety is another. As you follow the path, you notice shadows trailing you. Maybe it's nothing, just another traveler heading home. Or maybe, in this city of 1,000,000 souls, you've already caught the eye of someone less than friendly. You pick up your pace, pretending not to notice. The cobblestones echo under your sandals, your heartbeat a little louder than before. Finding your bearings in Rome, you realize, isn't just about maps or landmarks. It's about surviving the maze long enough to see another sunrise. And tonight, the city feels eager to test whether you're clever enough to play along. The deeper you wander into Rome, the more your nose betrays you. It's not just one smell, it's dozens, layered on top of each other, like a chaotic perfume no one asked for. At first, you catch the sweetness of honey cakes from a street vendor, the warm aroma of fresh bread drifting from a bakery. Your stomach perks up, thinking maybe this night won't be so bad. But then, just as quickly, the wind shifts, and you gag on the rank stench of sewage flowing through an open gutter. Welcome to the Roman nightlife experience, a sensory assault you didn't sign up for. The streets are alive with food. Skewers of meat crackle on small braziers, fat sizzling as it drips into the flames. A vendor stirs a pot of lentil stew, the steam wafting with earthy comfort. Another sells roasted chickpeas, scooped into little clay bowls for passers-by. The variety is impressive, but hygiene? That's another story. Scholars still argue whether Roman street food was a safer alternative to home cooking or a one-way ticket to stomach trouble. Judging by the swarm of flies competing for a share, you lean toward the latter. Still, curiosity gets the better of you. You buy a small piece of bread dipped in garum, the infamous Roman fish sauce. One bite, and your senses are overwhelmed. It's salty, pungent, and oddly addictive, like anchovies dialed up to 11. You wince, but then, you take another bite. Congratulations, you're officially becoming Roman. If you survive the night, maybe you'll even crave this strange concoction tomorrow. But food isn't the only thing in the air. Incense drifts lazily from a nearby temple, where late worshippers offer prayers to household gods. The fragrance of burning frankincense and myrrh mixes with the smoke of oil lamps, creating a haze that clings to your clothes. You pause for a moment, almost soothed, until a gust of wind carries the smell of dung from a donkey passing too close. Balance restored. You begin to realize that Rome never lets one smell dominate. Just when you think you've adjusted, another odor barges in. A tannery down the lane works with animal hides, filling the air with a sharp, acidic bite. Around the corner, bakers slide loaves into ovens, releasing a comforting yeasty warmth. Then, cutting through it all, the unmistakable odor of unwashed bodies pressed together in narrow streets. With over 1 million people living here, many without access to private baths, you can imagine how quickly the city's fragrance builds up. You reach a wide street where vendors sell exotic spices. Cinnamon, pepper, and saffron line the stalls, their scents rich and alluring. Imported luxuries from distant lands, proof of Rome's vast trade network. You breathe deeply, grateful for a break from sewage and sweat. For a brief moment, you're transported somewhere else, maybe a bazaar in Alexandria or a caravan in the east. But then a passing cart hits a pothole, splashing gutter water across your sandals, and reality returns with a squelch. Nearby, a group of men crowd around a wine cellar. The air grows sharp with the smell of sour grapes and vinegar. Roman wine is notoriously strong, often diluted with water before drinking. Tonight, though, these men clearly skipped that step. They spill their cups, laugh too loudly, and argue about chariot races while splashing the liquid onto the cobblestones. The sour scent lingers, mixing with everything else in the air. As you continue, you notice a smoky haze hanging low over the rooftops. Wood fires burn everywhere, people cooking, lamps glowing, taverns bustling. The smoke curls into the night sky, carrying with it the comforting but choking reminder that Rome is a city always awake. Sometimes, fires are small and controlled. Other times, well, you remember that infamous blaze Nero supposedly watched while fiddling. The noise reaches you before the doorway does. Laughter, shouting, the clatter of cups, and the occasional sharp crack of pottery breaking. You follow the sound and find yourself standing in front of a tavern, its doorway framed by flickering lamplight, its interior thick with smoke and heat. For a moment, you hesitate. You could keep walking and avoid whatever chaos waits inside. But then again, this is ancient Rome, and where else are you going to rest your legs, maybe get a drink, and figure out how to survive the night? So you duck under the low lintel and step inside. The atmosphere hits you like a wall. It smells of wine, cheap wine, mixed with sweat, roasted meat, and wood smoke. The room is crowded, the air heavy, and every table looks like it's been claimed by men already halfway to oblivion. A few women hover at the edges, some serving, others simply there for reasons you don't ask about. A man at the door eyes you suspiciously, then waves you in with a grunt. You're not sure whether he's the owner, the bouncer, or just another drunk who's appointed himself gatekeeper. Either way, you slide past and find a corner where you might blend into the chaos. The tavern keeper, a wiry woman with sharp eyes, slams a clay cup in front of you and fills it with deep red liquid from a jug. Wine, of course. Roman wine was infamous, so strong it was usually diluted with water, sometimes with honey or spices. You sniff it cautiously. This version smells rough, like it's been sitting in the jug a little too long. But you take a sip anyway, and instantly your tongue puckers. Strong, sour, with a faint aftertaste that makes you wonder whether vinegar was part of the recipe. Congratulations, you're drinking like a Roman now. Across the room, men argue loudly about chariot races. They're waving their hands, slamming the table, and nearly spilling their drinks as they shout the names of their favorite teams, the blues, the greens, the reds, the whites. You'd think they were talking about life or death battles, but no, it's all about horses and drivers circling the Circus Maximus. One man insists the blues are unbeatable, another swears by the greens, and before long, fists are flying. The tavern keeper doesn't even flinch, she just grabs an empty jug and smacks one of them across the back of the head, restoring order in her own efficient way. Closer to you, a pair of men lean over dice. They shake a cup, spill the tiny cubes onto the table, and groan as the results decide their fate. Gambling is technically illegal in Rome except during certain festivals, but rules bend easily here. Coins clink, tempers flare, and more than once you hear accusations of cheating. One man slams his fist, another reaches for a knife at his belt, and you find yourself quietly sliding your chair back an inch, just in case. Scholars still argue whether these taverns were more dangerous than the streets outside, and watching this unfold, you suspect the answer is definitely. The tavern isn't just for drinking and gambling, though. It's also a place for gossip. You catch fragments of conversation drifting through the din. One man mutters about the emperor raising taxes again. Another whispers a rumor about a senator caught in scandal. A group near the back jokes about the Praetorian Guard, their laughter a little too sharp, their eyes a little too watchful. You quickly learn that in Rome, even taverns are political arenas, just smaller and smellier. You take another sip of your wine and notice a young man across the room staring at you. He leans toward his friend, whispers something, and then grins. You realize, belatedly, that strangers stand out here. The way you dress, the way you hesitate. It marks you as someone unfamiliar with the rhythm of the city. And in a place like this, being unfamiliar makes you a target. You lower your gaze, pretending to be fascinated by the grain of the wooden table, hoping they'll lose interest. Instead, the tavern keeper slides a plate of food in front of you. Some kind of stew, lentils, onions, and a chunk of bread. You didn't order it, but refusing might be rude, or dangerous. You take a bite, and it's surprisingly good. Earthy, filling, exactly the kind of fuel you need to keep wandering through this city. You're halfway through when the man across the room finally gets up and approaches. He sits without asking, slaps the table, and starts talking rapidly in Latin. You catch only fragments, something about where you're from, maybe something about money. His breath reeks of wine, and his smile looks more like a threat. Before you can respond, another fight breaks out across the room. Two gamblers have decided the dice betrayed them, and now chairs are being overturned, cups smashed, wine spilling across the floor. Everyone shouts at once, and in the chaos, the man at your table shrugs, drains your cup of wine, and staggers off to join the brawl. You exhale slowly, relieved, though you realize your coin pouch is suddenly lighter than before. Congratulations, you've just been robbed, by distraction. The tavern keeper doesn't bother intervening this time. She knows the routine, fights happen, wine spills, the night goes on. The only rule is don't burn the place down. You finish the last bite of bread, stand up, and edge toward the door, careful not to draw more attention. Outside, the air feels fresher, cooler, even with the stink of the streets. You survived the tavern. Barely. But as you glance back, you realize something important. Rome at night is unpredictable. You can be laughing over bread one moment and fighting for your life the next. Inside the tavern, you weren't just a guest, you were prey, a wallet, a curiosity. Out here in the streets, it won't be much different. And with that thought, you step back into the night, wondering what other traps the eternal city has waiting for you. The street feels strangely quiet after the chaos of the tavern. You pause, breathing in the cooler air, half grateful for the escape and half aware that stepping outside doesn't mean you're safe. Rome never truly sleeps, and neither do its dangers. The lamps along the main road cast patches of flickering light, but you take a side street, thinking it might be faster or safer. Big mistake. Within moments, the noise of the city fades, and you're left with uneven cobblestones, shadows that seem too deep, and walls that loom like cliffs. The smell changes, too, less of roasted food and more of rot, waste, and damp. You hear footsteps behind you. Quick, light, almost playful. When you glance back, there's nothing but the shifting shadows. You speed up, your sandals scraping stone, the sound echoing far too loudly for your comfort. Another turn, another narrow alley, and suddenly you realize you've lost the thread of the main road. Rome's side streets are a labyrinth, and at night, they belong to people who know them far better than you do. From the darkness ahead, a voice calls out in Latin. You don't catch every word, but the tone is unmistakable, mocking, amused, confident. Then another voice joins in, closer this time, from your left. You freeze, heart pounding, realizing you've walked straight into a trap. The first figure steps forward, a boy, no more than 16, thin as a reed but with eyes that glitter like knives. Behind him comes another, older, bulkier, with a grin that shows more gaps than teeth. They aren't soldiers, not guards, not citizens walking home. They're something far older and far simpler, thieves. The smaller one circles you, his movements quick, darting, like he's done this 100 times. He calls out something you recognize this time, pecunia. Money. He extends his hand, palm up, as if expecting a donation rather than demanding a robbery. His friend just folds his arms, watching, waiting, ready to step in if you resist. You think about running, but the alley is narrow, and they know it better than you. You think about fighting, but you remember the knife at the gambler's belt in the tavern and realize you don't know what weapons they might carry. Rome's streets are littered with bones of people who thought bravery was enough. So you stall. You fumble at your belt, pretending to dig for coins, when suddenly the younger thief lunges forward. His hand is faster than yours, snatching the pouch before you can even react. You curse under your breath, but he's already dancing back, tossing it up and down like a prize. His companion laughs, a low, rasping sound that carries no warmth. But then, just as you brace for the worst, a new sound breaks the standoff. Heavy boots. Metal clinking. Voices speaking in clipped, commanding tones. Roman watchmen. The city's version of night patrol. The thieves hear it too, and instantly their demeanor shifts. The pouch disappears into a tunic, and without another word, they vanish into the maze of alleys, gone so quickly you might think you imagined them. Relief washes over you, but it's short-lived. The watchmen turn the corner and spot you standing there, alone, tense, looking guilty by sheer accident. They don't smile. They don't ask if you're okay. In fact, they eye you the way a butcher eyes a lamb. One of them steps forward, asking sharp questions in Latin you barely understand. You catch fragments. Who are you? What are you doing here? Why aren't you at home? You try to explain, but your stammering, foreign-sounding words don't help. To them, you look like exactly the kind of person who might be trouble, wandering the alleys at night, pockets light, eyes nervous. The thieves are long gone, but you're still here, and in Rome, that can be just as dangerous. One of the watchmen grabs your arm. His grip is iron, his expression unreadable. You realize in that moment that surviving the thieves doesn't mean you're safe from the law. In fact, the line between the two feels razor thin. In a city this big, power comes less from who's right and more from who's holding the weapon. Then, just as suddenly as they grabbed you, the patrol loses interest. Perhaps they've decided you're not worth the paperwork. Perhaps they've seen someone else more suspicious down the street. Either way, they shove you back against the wall and move on, leaving you shaken but free. You exhale shakily, pressing your back against the cold stone, trying to steady your breathing. The alley is quiet again, but the lesson is clear: in ancient Rome, the night is a chessboard, and you are the weakest piece. Thieves see you as prey, and watchmen see you as a nuisance. You're not a citizen, not a soldier, not protected by power or wealth. You're just another shadow moving through the city, trying not to get swallowed whole. You push yourself off the wall and retrace your steps, more carefully this time. Every sound makes you flinch, every shadow feels alive. The city has shown you its teeth, and you know this was only one corner of its endless maze. Somewhere beyond these alleys are markets, temples, fountains, but tonight, all you've seen are traps. As you finally stumble back toward the wider, busier streets, you realize something important. In Rome, the sun may belong to emperors, senators, and proud citizens. But the night? The night belongs to thieves. And you've only just survived your first encounter. The street widens again, and for a brief moment you feel relief. The alleys are behind you, and the glow of oil lamps ahead looks almost welcoming. But then you notice something: every doorway you pass has a bucket sitting nearby. Some are filled with water, others with sand. It feels odd, like the entire city is expecting disaster. And in truth, they are. You don't realize it at first, but Rome is a tinderbox. By day the grand marble temples impress visitors, but by night you start to see how fragile the rest of the city really is. Wooden shacks packed tight against one another, balconies jutting over narrow lanes, cloth awnings stretched across shops. Everywhere you look, you see fuel. And with every torch, every kitchen fire, every candle, the city edges closer to catastrophe. A sudden crackle behind you makes you spin, just a spark from a torch, but your pulse jumps. You remember what you've already smelled, smoke hanging in the air, thicker than it should be. You think of the gambling den, the taverns, the braziers left burning in cramped spaces. Rome isn't just noisy, it's flammable. The locals know it too. As you wander, you overhear mutters of the dreaded word ignis. Fire. One man points at the sky nervously, as if smoke could appear at any second. Another woman rushes past carrying a clay jar filled with water, muttering a quick prayer under her breath. You catch only fragments, but it's clear enough, Rome burns often, and Rome burns badly. Here's the historical fact scholars love to repeat: in the year 64 CE, during Emperor Nero's reign, a fire raged through the city for 6 full days, destroying most of what stood. Even now, centuries later, people still argue whether Nero played his lyre while watching it burn or whether that's just propaganda cooked up by his enemies. Scholars still argue whether he deliberately started it to clear land for his grand palace. Either way, the story lingers like smoke. And tonight you feel the truth of it: one spark could bring the whole city down. You notice a patrol of vigiles, Rome's night watch, trudging by. They aren't just here to scare off thieves. They're firefighters, armed with buckets, hooks, and primitive pumps. Their faces are tired, uniforms smudged with soot. They glance at every doorway, every flame, as if waiting for trouble. It's not glamorous work, but it's necessary. Without them, the city wouldn't last a month. Still, you don't feel reassured. The vigiles are small in number compared to the size of Rome. One district catches fire, and it spreads like gossip. You can almost picture it: a torch tips, a stall goes up in flames, and soon wooden rooftops glow like kindling. There are no fire engines, no alarms, just shouts, buckets, chaos. And you wouldn't stand a chance. As if to prove the point, a shout erupts nearby. A man barrels down the street, waving his arms, calling for help. Smoke drifts after him like a ghost. Instinct pulls you toward the commotion. At the corner, you see it, a tiny flame licking at a straw roof. People are already forming a chain, passing buckets of water hand to hand, sloshing more onto themselves than the fire. Children cry, dogs bark, everyone yells at once. It's small now, but you can tell why panic sets in so quickly. If the flame leaps to the next house, it won't stop. Neighbors pour water, the vigiles rush in with poles to tear down the burning thatch, and finally, mercifully, the fire sputters out. A blackened hole smokes in the roof, a family weeps, but disaster has been averted. For now. You step back, realizing how fragile everything is. In your time, fire is something controlled, managed, expected. In Rome, it's an unpredictable beast. Every Roman lives with that awareness, every night, every dream, every prayer. They don't ask if fire will come. They ask when. And yet, here's the quirky detail you wouldn't expect: some Romans actually worship fire as sacred. The eternal flame of Vesta, kept alive by the Vestal virgins in their temple, is never allowed to die out. It symbolizes Rome itself, its strength, its eternity. If that sacred fire were extinguished, people believed it was a terrible omen. So in a city terrified of flames, they also cherished one flame above all others. Talk about mixed feelings. You watch as the neighbors disperse, muttering to themselves, checking their own lamps nervously before retreating indoors. The vigiles linger, scanning for danger, then melt back into the night. The street feels tense, the air thick with smoke and sweat. You wipe your forehead, though you weren't even fighting the fire, and realize how exhausting it must be to live like this every single night. You continue walking, more cautious now. Every torch makes you uneasy. Every whiff of smoke sets your nerves on edge. Even when nothing is burning, you swear you see flames dancing in the corner of your vision. And then, almost without meaning to, you laugh softly to yourself. Here you are, in the greatest city of the ancient world, surrounded by temples, statues, and grandeur, and what's keeping you awake is the fear that the whole place might go up like a pile of dry twigs. It's absurd, but it's also true. Surviving the night in Rome isn't just about dodging thieves or pleasing the gods. It's about making it to dawn without watching your street vanish in a blaze. You glance at the skyline, where the outlines of rooftops shiver against the stars. For now, the city holds. But deep down, you understand why Romans walk with one ear tuned to crackling wood, one eye on the shadows, and one hand always ready for a bucket. You take a breath and move on, your steps quieter, your eyes sharper. Rome has taught you another of its lessons tonight. In a city built of stone and dreams, the greatest enemy may still be fire. You've barely shaken the scent of smoke from your clothes when a different aroma wafts through the air. This one is sharper, cleaner, steam mixed with oils, herbs, and something vaguely medicinal. You follow it down a side street and find yourself at the entrance to one of Rome's most famous institutions, the public baths. At first glance, it looks less like a bathhouse and more like a palace. Tall arches rise above you, torchlight spilling out in waves, the sound of voices echoing inside. People stream in and out, men in tunics, women accompanied by attendants, slaves carrying baskets of towels and jars of oil. To a Roman, this is perfectly ordinary. To you, it feels almost unreal. You've just walked from rat-infested alleys and fire hazards into something resembling a spa. You hesitate, unsure if you'll be welcome. But curiosity wins, and you slip inside. The first thing you notice is the warmth. It's not just cozy, it's heavy, pressing against your skin. The baths are heated by furnaces called hypocausts, hidden beneath the floors. Slaves shovel wood into the fire, the heat circulating through hollow spaces in the walls. You can almost hear the crackle beneath your feet. It feels advanced, almost futuristic, and yet you know that same heat is one accident away from burning the place down. As you move further inside, the rooms unfold like chapters in a book. First the apoditerium, the changing room, where men strip down and hand their clothes to slaves who guard them, or pretend to. Theft is common here, and you wonder if the thieves from earlier might have cousins working this very hall. From there, bathers wander into the tepidarium, the warm room, where the air hugs you like a blanket. Candles flicker on the walls, illuminating mosaics of sea creatures, nymphs, and gods. Steam clings to your eyelashes, and every breath feels like inhaling a cloud. The chatter of voices bounces off marble walls, rising and falling like the hum of a marketplace. Then comes the caldarium, the hot room. You peek inside and nearly choke on the heat. It's like stepping into the belly of a dragon. Pools of steaming water bubble at the edges, and bathers sit sweating profusely, massaging themselves with olive oil before scraping it off with curved tools called strigils. The combination of oil, sweat, and steam leaves a sheen on everything. To the Romans, it's cleansing. To you, it's questionable. And yet, there's a strange beauty to it. This is where senators, merchants, freedmen, even poor laborers can mingle. Status fades in the steam. Deals are struck here, friendships cemented, rumors whispered. One scholar once argued that more politics happened in Roman baths than in the Senate itself. Scholars still argue whether the baths were truly democratic spaces or just another stage for the elite to flaunt their wealth. Either way, you realize you're standing in the social heart of the city. You're drawn next to the frigidarium, the cold room. Here the steam clears, replaced by the sharp scent of chilled water. A massive pool glimmers in the lamplight, bathers plunging in with audible gasps. Their shouts echo across the vaulted ceiling, mingling with the splash of waves. The cold shocks their bodies after the furnace heat, a ritual of balance they swear keeps them healthy. You shiver just watching. Not everything here is elegant, though. In the corners, you notice grime that no amount of scrubbing can erase. Sweat-streaked benches, cloudy water, floors slick with a mixture of oil and dirt. A slave tips a bucket to clear one patch, only for another to appear moments later. You realize these baths aren't just luxury, they're also breeding grounds for every disease you can imagine. You wouldn't be surprised if half the city's fevers start right here in the frigidarium. And then there's the quirky detail, some Romans brought snacks. Vendors slip between rooms offering honey cakes, nuts, even wine. Imagine sweating yourself half to death in the caldarium only to crunch on roasted chickpeas immediately after. You have to admire their commitment to turning everything, even hygiene, into a social event. You linger by a doorway, trying not to draw too much attention. For a moment, you let yourself relax. The glow of the lamps, the sound of water, the soft murmur of voices, it's almost hypnotic. You can see how Romans could spend hours here, how a simple bath could feel like a nightly ritual of belonging. But then reality intrudes. A man shouts angrily as he discovers his sandals have gone missing. Another bathgoer coughs violently, hacking into the steam. A slave slips on the wet marble and nearly spills a jug of oil. You're reminded that even in its grandeur, the bathhouse is just another part of Rome, messy, unpredictable, full of risk. Still, you feel grateful for this glimpse. The baths reveal something different about the city, something beyond crime and fire. They show the Roman obsession with balance, between hot and cold, luxury and filth, leisure and politics. They show how deeply the people crave community, even if it means sweating together in a cloud of other people's oil. Eventually, you decide it's time to leave. You're a stranger here, and the longer you linger, the more likely someone is to notice. You slip back into the cool night air, the roar of the baths fading behind you. The contrast is stark. Outside, the streets are dark, tense, dangerous. Inside, the baths glowed with warmth and conversation. You realize that surviving a Roman night isn't just about avoiding thieves or fires, it's also about knowing when to step into the light, and when to fade back into the shadows. With that thought, you press onward, deeper into the Roman night, your skin still prickling with borrowed steam. The warmth of the bathhouse still clings to your skin, but the night outside hits you like a cold reminder. The streets are quieter now, though not silent. A dog barks in the distance. Somewhere, a drunk laughs too loudly. And then you hear it, boots on stone. Heavy. Rhythmic. Unhurried. At first, you think it might be another patrol of soldiers, but the sound is different. Less polished, more practical. From the shadows ahead, a group of men steps into view. They carry torches that spit sparks, casting their faces into shifting orange light. Their tunics are marked with leather straps, some carry short swords, and others lug buckets or long hooked poles. You've just crossed paths with the Vigiles, Rome's night watch. In theory, they're here to protect. Firefighters, peacekeepers, guardians of the sleeping city. Augustus himself created this force after too many devastating blazes. You remind yourself of that as they approach. Protection. Safety. Order. But the closer they get, the more uneasy you feel. Their eyes scan the street, not like friendly guards but like predators evaluating whether you belong here. One of them spots you immediately. He jerks his chin, and the whole patrol slows. The torchlight flares, and suddenly you're caught in their gaze. You consider walking briskly past, pretending to belong, but you're already too obvious. The leader, broad shoulders, scar across his cheek, steps forward. He barks a question in Latin, sharp and clipped. You catch fragments, yes. Quid facis? Who are you? What are you doing? The words are simple, but in his mouth they feel like accusations. You stammer, offering the few Latin phrases you know, but your accent betrays you instantly. His expression hardens. Another vigil circles behind you. You feel the weight of their scrutiny like chains. You think back to the thieves from earlier, how they vanished at the first hint of these men. Now you understand why. The night watch may chase criminals, but they also police strangers, foreigners, anyone without status. And you, wandering aimlessly through alleys, fit that description perfectly. The leader gestures toward your belt, where your pouch once hung before it was stolen. His eyes narrow. To him, you don't look like a victim, you look like someone suspiciously without means. You try to explain, fumbling through half-formed words, but your voice sounds thin against the crackle of their torches. Here's the historical fact worth knowing: the vigiles were drawn mostly from freedmen, former slaves. That gave them a peculiar edge. They weren't aristocrats enforcing law for pride, they were men clawing for authority in a city that barely respected them. Some did their jobs with honor. Others used it as a license to extort. Scholars still argue whether the vigiles were true protectors of Rome or just another gang with state approval. Tonight, you lean toward the latter. The leader steps closer, his torch so near you can feel its heat on your cheek. He mutters something to his companion, and they both chuckle darkly. You don't understand the words, but you don't need to. The meaning is clear enough. You brace for trouble. A bribe, maybe. A beating, if you don't comply. For all you know, they could drag you to their station and you'd never be seen again. Rome is vast, and justice often depends on who has the stronger arm in the moment. And then, in a twist of luck, a commotion breaks out nearby. Shouts, a crash, the sound of pottery shattering. The leader curses, waves his men forward, and just like that, you're forgotten. They rush down the street, torches bouncing, leaving you in darkness once more. You exhale, your body shaking with relief. Surviving thieves was bad enough, but surviving the vigiles feels trickier. Thieves take your money. The watch can take your freedom. Still, you can't help but marvel at the strange paradox of it all. These men are the reason Rome hasn't burned to the ground every other week. They're the ones who rush into flames, who keep the city from devouring itself in chaos. And yet, standing in their shadow, you realize they can also be the very thing you fear most. Protection and intimidation, rolled into one. As you continue walking, you notice their presence everywhere. Charred patches on buildings tell stories of past fires they fought. Graffiti scrawled on walls mocks them, calling them corrupt. A tavern door creaks open, and patrons fall silent until the patrol passes. It's a city that respects and resents them in equal measure. And here's the quirky detail: the vigiles sometimes doubled as amateur medics. They carried vinegar-soaked cloths to breathe through smoke, and those same cloths were later pressed to wounds when brawls broke out. Imagine trusting the same man to put out your fire and set your broken arm, while also deciding whether or not you spend the night in a cell. You shake your head, realizing just how fragile your situation is. You don't belong to Rome. You don't have its protection. Every encounter, every face, is a gamble. Tonight, you happen to slip away when their attention shifted. Next time, you might not be so lucky. The night feels heavier now, the silence sharper. You tread carefully, avoiding eye contact with anyone you pass, ears tuned for the sound of boots. Somewhere, out there, the vigiles still prowl, their torches cutting through the dark like hunting lanterns. And you? You're just another shadow trying not to be caught in the light. You remind yourself again, surviving Rome's night isn't about heroism. It's about slipping quietly through the cracks, unnoticed, unimportant. You walk faster, heart steadying, determined to find a safer corner of the city before dawn. You've been walking long enough that the rhythm of your footsteps almost lulls you into calm, but Rome doesn't let you stay calm for long. From the next street, voices spill into the night, heated, sharp, almost theatrical. At first, you think it's just another tavern argument, the kind you've already heard tonight. But when you drift closer, you realize it's something different: politics. In your world, politics happens in debates, speeches, maybe late-night TV. In Rome, it happens in wine shops, over bread crusts, whispered in doorways where torches flicker low. You hover near a group of men seated around a rough wooden table, their goblets half full, their tempers more than full. One leans forward, voice low but urgent. "The Senate has lost its teeth," he hisses. His friend replies with a bitter laugh, spilling a little wine onto the table. "The Senate never had teeth. Not with the emperor watching." Their words tumble into the night like sparks. You catch names: Augustus, Nero, Claudius, emperors past and present, spoken with the same mix of fear and mockery. One man swears that the current emperor spies on his own household through servants. Another insists that senators conspire daily, waiting for the right moment to strike. A third just shakes his head, muttering that nothing ever changes, that Rome devours itself no matter who sits on the throne. You lean closer, careful not to be noticed. It strikes you how openly they complain, yet how carefully they glance over their shoulders. Every whisper in Rome might carry to the wrong ears. Informers, delators, lurk everywhere, reporting treasonous words for money or favor. A careless complaint could land you in chains, or worse, make you vanish into the maw of the emperor's wrath. And here's your mainstream fact for tonight: Emperor Tiberius once encouraged a culture of informers so thoroughly that men were executed for jokes. Yes, jokes. A wrong word about the emperor's statues, and your head might roll. Scholars still argue whether he was paranoid or simply enforcing loyalty through fear. Either way, the shadow of that precedent lingers over every whispered conversation in Rome. You watch as one man leans in closer to the group, lowering his voice until you have to strain to hear. He swears he has a cousin who knows someone in the Praetorian Guard, the emperor's elite protectors. According to him, a conspiracy brews beneath the surface, waiting to topple the throne. The others laugh at him, but nervously, like men who laugh because the truth is too dangerous to admit. It's almost comical, ordinary men with wine-stained tunics gossiping about the fate of an empire that stretches across continents. Yet you sense how much weight these whispers carry. Politics here isn't a distant affair, it's the air people breathe. The emperor's mood can change the price of bread. A senator's fall can shift fortunes overnight. Then comes the quirky detail: Romans love satire. Even in fear, they can't help making jokes about power. One of the men raises his goblet and toasts, "May the emperor's bathwater always be too cold." The others roar with laughter, quickly shushing themselves, but you can tell it's not the first time they've toasted something absurd. It's their way of thumbing their noses at danger, laughing while the knife hovers above their necks. You notice, though, how their laughter fades quickly. One of them points at a passerby lingering nearby, and suspicion flares. Is he an informer? A spy? Their conversation drops to whispers again, words so soft you can barely catch them. Rome's paranoia doesn't sleep. As you drift away, you reflect on what you've overheard. Rome is mighty, but it's also fragile. Its power rests not only on armies and walls but also on fragile egos, conspiracies, and whispers traded over wine. Surviving a Roman night isn't just about dodging thieves or fires, it's about keeping your mouth shut when others might not. And you? You realize with a chill that even listening could be dangerous. If someone accuses you of repeating treason, you'd have no defense. A foreigner with no allies, no wealth, no citizenship, your word would mean nothing. The safest path is silence, always silence. You take one last glance at the group. They're laughing again, wine spilling, voices bouncing off the stone walls. To an outsider, it might look like nothing more than friends enjoying a late drink. But you know better. You've heard the daggers in their laughter, the rebellion in their whispers, the tension in their glances. Rome's politics doesn't sleep. It lingers in every tavern, every street corner, every rumor. The empire may look eternal, but tonight you've seen how fragile it really is, how easily it could be undone not by armies, but by men huddled in shadows, plotting between sips of sour wine. You pull your cloak tighter and walk on. Better to let the night swallow their words before you accidentally carry them with you. You think you've earned a moment of quiet after that brush with politics, but Rome has other plans. Just when you settle into the rhythm of your footsteps, you hear it, a sharp bark that echoes off the narrow walls. Then another. Then a whole chorus. You freeze. Out of the shadows lurch a pack of dogs, ribs sharp against their skin, eyes glowing faintly in the torchlight. These aren't pets waiting for a treat. They're scavengers, survivors of Rome's endless waste. Leftover scraps, rotting meat, the occasional unlucky traveler, dogs here eat whatever they can find. A few snarl at each other before turning their attention to you. For a moment, your heart stutters. You imagine teeth tearing into your cloak. Luckily, a louder clatter, maybe a tavern keeper dumping scraps, draws them away. They vanish into the alley, tails stiff, growls still vibrating through the night. But dogs are just the beginning. As you keep walking, the streets reveal a whole menagerie of Rome's unofficial residents. Cats slink along roof tiles, tails twitching as they stalk the scurrying shadows of rats. They're sleek, cautious, almost invisible until torchlight catches the gleam of their eyes. You get the sense that for every cat you spot, 10 more are watching you. Rats, though, rats aren't shy. They burst out from a heap of straw, scattering in all directions, squeaking in panic. A few pause boldly to gnaw at something in the gutter. You realize with a grimace it's not food but a piece of leather, maybe from a sandal. One bold rat stares at you as if daring you to step closer. You don't. And here's a mainstream fact for tonight: Rome's sewers, the Cloaca Maxima, were an engineering marvel for their time. They drained waste and rainwater into the Tiber River, keeping the city functional. But scholars still argue whether this system really improved public health, or if it just shifted the filth elsewhere. One thing's certain: rats thrived on the overflow. Wherever water and refuse met, they multiplied. You skirt around a puddle, but even then, you feel a tickle at your ankle. You glance down just in time to see a cockroach scuttling away. Quirky detail incoming: Romans actually admired some insects. They kept beetles as good luck charms and believed certain bugs had magical properties. But roaches? No one loved roaches. Judging by the swarm you just disturbed, they'll outlast the empire itself. Your sandals slap the uneven stones, and the night plays tricks on your ears. Every rustle feels like a claw, every squeak a set of eyes fixed on you. It's not paranoia, it's Rome. Animals here are woven into the fabric of daily life. Pigeons crowd temple roofs. Owls hoot from abandoned houses, their cries considered omens, bad ones, usually. Superstitious whispers follow them, blaming them for illness or death. As you walk deeper into the neighborhood, the smell hits you again. Rotting garbage piled high at the corners, scraps tossed carelessly into the street, and something else. You don't want to identify it, but your brain insists anyway. Dead animal. A bloated shape slumps against the wall, half hidden under cloth. Flies rise in a shimmering cloud when you pass. You swallow hard. And then, the sound. Skittering. Many feet, moving fast. You stop cold as a family of rats pours from a drain, weaving across the stones like a living river. You step back, your stomach twisting. They're so bold they almost brush against your sandals. For a moment, you think you'll retch. But then, just as suddenly, they vanish back into another crack in the wall. Silence returns, but it's the kind of silence that hums with menace. Rome isn't just about people and politics, it's about pests. They shape the night in their own way. Bakers fight to keep rats out of their grain. Butchers curse stray dogs gnawing at bones. Even bathhouses, those supposed oases of cleanliness, struggle with fleas and lice. Scholars still argue whether ordinary Romans were even aware of how infested their lives were, or if it was simply the background noise of existence. Your own awareness, however, is painfully sharp. Every shadow feels alive, every scrap of refuse a trap. You catch yourself holding your cloak tighter, not just against the chill but against the thought of fleas burrowing into the fabric. Imagine spending a night scratching, unable to sleep, driven mad by tiny invaders. In truth, that might be the cruelest way you wouldn't survive Rome. Still, Rome has its defenders, even among the creatures. You spot a cat padding silently along a wall, its posture regal, tail flicking like a whip. It pauses, stares at you with golden eyes, and then leaps gracefully onto a roof. For a second, you almost admire it. Maybe cats, not men, are the true rulers of this city. They go where they please, they eat what they want, and no emperor can stop them. You breathe deeply, forcing your pulse to slow. But then, somewhere far off, you hear the distant howl of another dog pack. This time, it sounds like they've found something, or someone. The hair on your arms prickles. You pick up your pace, sandals clapping faster, trying not to think about what the dogs are tearing apart. Rome's animals don't let you forget one thing: survival isn't guaranteed. Not for the poor, not for travelers, and not even for emperors. The empire's stone walls and marble temples might stand tall, but underneath, life scurries, claws, and bites. And tonight, you're just another heartbeat in the food chain.